I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and good afternoon, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMar, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host,
Rebecca Wood, who I would just like to point out is wearing this Monster Truck t-shirt ironically.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, together Rebecca and I are about to bring you an incredible hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families, and the bald eagles and the health and happiness of the snails and the worms and the critters, basically all the plants and animals and microscopic critters and basically every living thing on the planet, because like it or not, all us living things are tied up together on this beautiful planet called Earth. And man, have I had a time over the last month traversing this planet. It's been an incredible past 4 weeks for me, and let me tell you, I've missed all of you. I've missed every one of you, and please feel free to call in during the next hour at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. I'd love to hear from you and hear any kind of ecological question or comment or observation you've made over the past month that you'd like us to talk about. We'd love to talk with you. So what's going to happen is we're going to talk for the next little while here, and then we're going to hear from our advertisers and patrons, our wonderful advertisers and patrons, and then Rebecca, it will be your turn to take over the mic. What do you have to talk about this week?
I have what the blue blazes is happening on Becca's porch.
Okay, the Becca Porch Report.
There have been developments.
All right, cool. And then we've got some ecological news. And of course, as I said, and as I hope to hear from you folks at 877-909-1007. So those of you who heard our last pre-recorded show before I went off know that I just spent 2 weeks in Chennai, India, which was an amazing experience. And I just wanted to share some of my ecological observations about that area over there. I have to apologize first. I had confused Tamil Nadu and Chennai. Chennai is the city I was in, and Tamil Nadu is the state that the city's in. And so there's 72 million people in Tamil Nadu, but Chennai is quote unquote only a city of 5 million people.
Bad place for introverts.
Yeah, no, there's somebody everywhere. You know, it was kind of mind blowing. Basically, it's a whole different culture, and the first big thing about that you notice when you get off the plane is, of course, the climate. It's incredibly hot and humid there. Where it's right on the coast of India, and at one point I went down to the beach, and looking up and down the beach, you could actually see the humidity, the water vapor in the air rolling in off the ocean, just coming in, and everybody everybody has a sheen of sweat on them. Everybody is sweating
Right.
all the time, and you don't think about it because it's just like that's the situation. You're going to be sweating, so which meant we had to drink a lot of water, constant water drinking. But at the same time, tap water is not considered potable.
Oh boy.
People don't drink the tap water, even the people who live there. So everybody's drinking bottled water or filtered water. And so that was something very interesting. The traffic was, it's kind of indescribable, all right? I mean, if you've been to if you've ever driven in Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
multiply that by about 10.
Wow.
because
Wow.
there's thousands upon thousands of little three-wheeled things called tuk-tuks,
Oh my.
and then little four-wheeled thing, and then little cars mixed in with big SUVs.
There's no tuk-tuk lane.
No, there's no I mean, there's lanes, there's suggestions,
Right.
but people are likely coming the opposite way in that lane because, well, they just need to get to the other end of the block, and they're not
Right.
going to drive around. So,
No, of course
so you've got most people going one direction, but a definite flow of people coming back the other way. And
Oh no.
the density is, I mean, literally, I could just stick my arm out of the tuk-tuk at any point and touch the person on the next motorcycle or in the next tuk-tuk.
And boy, don't they kick up a fuss when you do that.
They didn't have a please keep arms and hands inside the vehicle, but they could have. They should have, frankly.
Yeah.
And you're going along, and basically they use their horns kind of like sonar.
Right. Okay.
You're driving along, and when you're about to cut somebody off, you give them a little beep, beep, beep. And so now they expect you to like cut right in front of them, and everybody's going along at 30, 40 miles an hour.
Oh
But
boy.
amazingly few accidents. That was one thing that struck me, is that when I drive in here from Bowling Green to Toledo, going on the city streets or on the highway, I almost always see an accident. There's like a bumper laying in the street somewhere.
Right.
The whole time I was there, I saw one minor fender bender where a guy like on a motorcycle got kind of a bruise on his thigh, but other than that, no, there's no bumpers laying around. Somehow they're making this work, and
It's very polite chaos. It's a sort of like your local anarchist collective that offers you some nice vegan pepperoni they found in a dumpster.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
kind of. But organized anarchy that's a good way to. They do stop at lights eventually, not right away, because that would be like admitting that I got to stop at a light.
Totally. Yeah.
But eventually,
does that?
people do stop at lights.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that was the traffic. Oh, and interestingly, they run on compressed natural gas. There's no gasoline around, so there was surprisingly little smog, which I thought was very, very interesting. There's also some other interesting ecological things. No single-use plastics anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Good.
Yeah, no plastic forks.
Because there's so
plastic
many of them,
bowls.
they'd be like neck deep in single-use plastics at this point.
Yeah,
That
right.
Makes sense.
And there is a huge dump that you see as you're coming in from the airport. This tremendous mountain of garbage on the way into town. But I was thinking, because the other thing I did after Chennai, I went right out to Garden Island in Michigan, which is an island, abandoned island. There were 6 people on a 15 square mile island. So I went right from 5 billion people to 6.
You could sort of decompress from the overstimulation.
Right, and coming back from that, I passed a lot of closed landfills.
Mhm.
Right, yeah. So yeah, Chennai has a mountain of garbage, but on the other hand, we've got lots of mountains of garbage. We just cover ours with dirt.
Right. Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
As opposed to Europe, where they're actually getting rid of landfills. They're moving away from that quote unquote technology.
Or sometimes we
altogether.
do genius things like, chuck it all in a coal mine and set it on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That happened once. It wasn't good.
So so you got the cars, the traffic's insane. That's on the main roads. There are quiet back streets though that the cars don't go down too often. But what also they have, also tossed into the traffic mix are dogs, wild dogs that are everywhere, wild cats. There's not as many of them, and cows. Yeah, so one of the things that you might encounter as you're zipping along in your lane and somebody's coming the other way is a cow walking back past that person, and you have to pause for the cow.
Right.
And all these animals, the cows, the dogs, the cats, and crows. There's crows everywhere.
Right.
They all just wander around. This is their this is their natural habitat, and people don't harass them. And actually, we stayed at this yoga.
Well, cows are sacred and also will mess up your car pretty bad if you hit one, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you don't want to mess
so
with
that's two
the
good
cows.
reasons.
Right. So our neighbor, we stayed at this nice little yoga studio that had some extra rooms and some beds. And the next door neighbors, the reason there's so many animals that can live in this city of 5 billion people is that people are constantly putting out food for them. They're putting out plates with rice and other foodstuffs as part of their religion. And so the next door neighbor there was a schedule. The cow would show up like about 6:45 and wait at the gate, and
Oh, excuse me, it's the neighborhood cow.
right, somewhere between 6:45 and
Little
7,
snack.
the people who lived in that house would come out with their plate of food and set it down, and the cow would eat that and then go on to the next house.
All right. Yeah.
So, and so that actually made me think, that contrasted with Bowling Green.
Yeah, there's no neighborhood cows here.
No neighborhood cows, but where people are all up in arms about like deer and we just had that silly ordinance passed that the debate around should we let people feed food or feed wild animals or not, and and here, city of 5 billion people, and like at least 2 billion of them are just every day they're just feeding the animals, and they all get along
as casually as we would put up a bird feeder.
Yeah, exactly. But some of the people in that testimony in Bowling Green were like, and we've got too many squirrels too, and too many chipmunks, and we need to get rid of all these animals.
Oh my God.
And I was like, they would not survive in Chennai.
They would not.
If you freak out at a squirrel, you're not going to handle a cow walking past you every day very well.
Did you see that one video? It was in India, and it was this guy was trying to beat up this lady, and her cow defended her.
No, I didn't see that video.
Yeah, and she had a calf near her. You could see in the background there was a calf, and here was this guy, making big arm movements and yelling near her calf. I think that probably triggered it.
Huh. Well, it sounds like he deserved it.
Yeah.
But so also another difference in Chennai, there's no toilet paper, no TP.
Oh.
Yeah, no.
That's a problem.
No, it's not a problem.
Okay.
I mean, this is how they deal with it.
Right.
They have hoses.
Oh, okay.
The toilets all have a hose on the left-hand side.
Probably more efficient.
And
Cleanliness-wise.
and it's a little bizarre. I have to confess, I only actually used that method a couple times. But
sounds like it would take some getting used to.
It does. Yeah, there's definitely a technique.
So it's sort of a primitive bidet.
Yeah, it is a
saying,
bidet. I wouldn't say primitive. I would say it's like a bidet.
Right.
So, but but I was thinking about that and thinking about how we just always use toilet paper.
Yeah.
And we know that a lot of that toilet paper is made from cellulose that comes from cutting up old growth forests.
Absolutely.
And so between the no single-use plastics and no toilet paper, it's kind of like, it really struck me how people everywhere are doing some things to like protect the environment. I mean,
Right.
all of it is not adding up yet
It's not enough.
to
Not
actually
quite enough,
saving
yeah.
the planet, but everybody is working on it in their own way,
Yeah, we
and they're
try.
really working on it there in Chennai. And also, what struck me about the people of Chennai is there seems to be a big focus on self-improvement.
Oh my.
There's all kinds of schools to, you can get better at singing, you can get better at dancing, martial arts, yoga. Everybody's like, self-improvement seems to be a big thing there in that part of India.
Except for it's about singing and dancing.
Well, yeah.
Instead of trying to further your career or something.
Well, no, and they're also very into career focus.
Okay.
And just, success. But there's also, there's enough people that you have people helping you with everything. All right, so we had we stayed at a villa that my friends rented. The reason I went there is because a friend that are friends of mine, they've been married for 12 years legally here in the U.S., but they decided to have the big, beautiful Hindu ceremony.
Oh yeah.
And that was intense too. That was a whole day-long affair. And they rented a villa for us. And so this villa came with a guy who managed the gate. That was his job. He lived in a little house next to the gate. A woman who came in and made breakfast every day and kept the place straightened up and made sure the water filter was full of water. And another guy who took care of the pool. There were people to do every task because with 5 billion people, there's enough people around to do everything. And that was really interesting that there's so many people involved in that sort of thing. And then, as I said, I went directly from Chennai to Garden Island in Lake Michigan, which is primitive camping, no plumbing, so don't have to worry about the whole hose TP debate. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we have TP.
I don't know what a good hose would do you at that point.
Hose would not be good. There is a famous book which includes in its title a word I can't say on the radio, but it's How to in the Woods. And if anyone's curious about how that's done, I recommend reading that. But go ahead.
Make sure you're not using poison ivy in place of toilet paper.
Right.
Rule number 1.
Know your plants before you go out into the woods like that.
At least know that one. It's important.
But it was, as always, an incredibly beautiful experience. I've been going out to Garden Island for about 40 years now. I realized this is like the 40th year.
Wow.
I've gone up there for part of the summer. And it was beautiful as always, but I had to contrast it. Couldn't help contrasting the state of that island now with the state that it was in 40 years ago. One thing is that it used to be crystal clear. You'd go up and you could see the stars, you could see the Milky Way, and it was just like an incredible, better than a planetarium, kind of a light show, just looking at the stars. Now there's a big haze on the northern horizon, and much of that haze is coming from Canadian wildfires, and that's one of our first news stories. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later in the show. But there was only one night out of the 2 weeks that I was up there where I could actually see the Milky Way, and it was not a clear. Sometimes you can see the Milky Way so clearly that like you could see that it's clouds of stuff.
Wow.
And this was just kind of like a blur in the sky.
You gotta wonder if like astronomy would have ever come to be, if it didn't start till the modern era.
That's true. I mean, there were a lot of nights where I could see maybe a dozen stars. You could pick out the Big Dipper, find Polaris, There was one nice night when the moon, and I think I saw the moon with 3 planets at once in the sky. That was cool. And the moon, of course, is always beautiful, but the island is changing. The island, climate change has come to the northernmost tip of Michigan. The trees that were there 40 years ago were mostly cedar. It was mostly a cedar tree forest, with others like some pine, and mostly coniferous. And now the island has transitioned mainly to deciduous trees, so like maples and butternuts.
Okay.
And it's a very different feel.
Yeah.
Because when you get in that coniferous forest that used to be, it was so thick that it was pitch black, and no light came through sometimes. It was like a dark, and now it's more of a light, open kind of forest. And this year, as I've seen in recent years, there's been more of a transition over to basically seagulls being the main bird you see on the shore, whereas it used to be things like loons. We did hear a couple loons, so they're not gone, but they're definitely reduced. Oh, and there was one cute little merganser mother that was herding like 14 little merganser chicks around the beach. That was fun. Oh, but there were no bald eagles. Well, only occasional bald eagles 40 years ago. Now there's nesting populations of bald eagles on Garden Island. So we saw bald eagles almost every day.
Wow.
That was amazing.
They're
And
probably eating the seagulls, thriving.
Yeah.
These big birds.
I actually saw, at one point there's a little falcon called a merlin, and I actually saw a merlin like harassing a bald eagle. It was kind of like a fighter plane attacking a bomber. It was
Right.
It was cool. I always see really cool stuff when I go up there, and it's the quiet. There was one night there where it was perfectly quiet, and there's other nights where the lake, because of the winds, was roaring, crashing 3-foot waves. It was different every single day, which is really kind of one of the beautiful things about being out there in the wilderness. Is it's not boring. and it is beautiful, and I've been very blessed to be able to go up there for so many years with this group that I'm in. It's called Midiskittigan Drum, and we have a camp up there that everybody kind of pitches in. And it is interesting because we are just like normal, average, like income people. But the reason we're able to maintain that camp is because we all cooperate and everybody contributes. And we're the ones who put it up and take it down every year. We don't hire people like they have in India. We don't have people doing that for us. We're doing all the work ourselves.
Although you probably could if you were in India, because I think people work pretty cheap there.
They do work
Yeah.
cheap there, yeah. So if we were in India, we could create something like that inexpensively.
It was the same when I was in Mexico. It was actually cheaper to get your clothes tailored than it was to buy them in the store in many cases.
Wow, yeah.
Because labor is so cheap, and so many people have skills.
Right. But so when we're on the island, though, we have to chop our own wood. We have to, cut our own logs. We have to filter our own water. We have to carry water up from the beach in buckets. And it really makes you appreciate what you've got here. I mean, when I got off the island, one of the first things I did was went to a restaurant, and I was washing my hands there, and I was thinking, wow, this water's really cold. And then I realized, oh, there's a lever.
Yeah.
I just have to turn that lever, it'll get warm again.
It's amazing how that works.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind a little. But the point is that the amount of resources it takes to live that simply are just a tiny, tiny fraction of what we normally use every day. And you can have a very full, very satisfying life without the mounds of stuff that we feel like we've got to have in this society. And that it always brings it home to me every year, just how simple it is to live in a setting like that, and how grateful I am I've been able to experience it. Now, most of the people a lot of the other people that get out to that island, these are people who have like private boats, private yachts, and they're like, they're pretty fairly wealthy, and they're doing it because they've got a lot of money, whereas our group, we don't have a lot of money, but we still managed to get the experience because we're able to work together. I need it every year. I need a couple weeks of like just being in nature, waking up to the dawn, and hearing the birds. There's a lot of different birds up there still. There was one winter wren. I don't know if we might have a birder or two in our audience who know the song of the winter wren. It's really beautiful and complicated and long, and I could just listen to it for hours. And almost no cell service. There used to be 40 years ago, there was nothing. 40 years ago, you'd go out there, you'd be gone from the world. Now I could still text a little bit. I can't send pictures or anything, but it does change it to still be able to do that much. But I'm still kind of going on my island high right now. So that's why I might sound unusually calm and sort of
even
balanced.
A little loopy.
Yeah. I had to drink half a bottle of a highly caffeinated beverage just to be able to get up to the mic to this morning.
Yep.
Because got in late last night. But as I said, I've been very happy and blessed to be able to talk to all of you. I missed all of you greatly. So I just want to say thank you all to my listeners. I'm very grateful for all of you, and I'm also grateful for our advertisers and patrons. And so let's go to our advertisers now.
For a Green Future is also brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They also restore wildlife habitats and lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. There are several ways to get a hold of them and find out what's happening. One is to call them at 419-353-1897. Another is to visit their website, www.wcparks.org. The website again is www.wcparks.org. They are also available on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and many others. Just search for WC Parks. That's the Wood County Park District, and we're very grateful for their support.
And we're also grateful to our patrons. And our patrons are wonderful people who've gone to patreon.com. There they searched for a Green Future, and up popped our Patreon page. They looked it over, picked a membership level that matched their budget, and every month a little bit comes out of their accounts, comes over to us, and that's how we can afford to stay on the air. So thank you very much to our patrons, and won't you please consider becoming one of them. Okay, we're about to go to Rebecca, but just two quick things. One, I wanted to give a shout out to the Citizens Climate Lobby people, because as I was driving in today on I-75, I saw them over there on the side of the road picking up trash, which is nice. I respect the Citizens Climate Lobby people. They're a great bunch of people. I disagree with their strategy for combating climate change, which is a carbon tax at the source. They want to tax the oil companies and then every year have the oil companies send all of us a check. I think that A, increases the price of fossil fuels, which is good, but B, well, it's hard on people, but B, if the oil companies are sending you a check every year, how motivated are you going to be to close down the oil companies? Because that's what we have to do to survive. So, but the people in Citizens Climate Lobby are wonderful. They're some of the best people I know. And the other thing I wanted to mention before we get into the rest of the show, I'm going to be available all week. I'm going to be at the Wood County Green Party's booth at the Wood County Fair in Bowling Green, Ohio. So if you want to come, if you ever had curiosity to see what I'm like in actual person, you can come. We could take a selfie. I'm going to leave my Garden Island beard growing for this week, so this will be the limited edition Bearded Joe selfies.
So you won't be able to see his chin, but other than that,
Right, you
it'll
can
be
see
Joe.
the rest of me.
Yes.
Yeah, if you'd like to come out to see it, I'd be happy to chat with you. All right, Rebecca, what's going on your porch?
Okay, well, for a while I've been going outside and I've noticed a couple of things are different. First of all, there's this this plant with vines and purple blossoms and red berries growing on the bushes in front of the porch, which I was pretty sure was deadly nightshade. And I looked at, I looked up purple flowers with red berries, and I looked at the pictures and everything. And it does grow in Ohio, so I'm pretty sure this is probably Solanum dulcamara, which is a nightshade. It's in the nightshade family with a lot of really yummy vegetables that we've already talked about. We've talked about Solanum a lot because it has good stuff in it. But deadly nightshade berries, even though they look like tiny tomatoes, you really should not eat. Don't eat them. No.
Right.
Bad idea.
Do not eat the tiny tomatoes.
So, according to the Ohio Weed Guide, they are an ornamental plant from Eurasia. It's native to Eurasia and has become abundant in eastern and north central U.S. They grow in thickets, hedgerows, ditches, stream banks, marshes, swamp forests, deciduous woods, waste areas, roadsides, railroads, orchards, and the margins of fields. So kind of any place people will let them grow, it sounds like. They like rich, moist soils, though, and tolerate shade well. That's why it's probably called a nightshade. I don't know. But they're a perennial climbing or trailing vine. Reproduces both by seed and by rooting at the end of stems that are the trailing vine type that are like vertical, or horizontal, yeah.
Runners,
yeah. Right, and they're unique among viney plants for having hollow stems, apparently. So those are there, and about the time they started to show up, are mason bees, which I'm pretty sure is what those little sparkly green bees that had both a green sparkly part and a black and yellow stripy part were under our porch. They kind of vanished. Like 1 week, I think we forgot the trash. Or no, our neighbors put a whole bunch of stuff in the trash right after it had been collected. So they were attracting houseflies. And at that same time, the mason bees disappeared. So I was kind of curious about why. So I looked in crownbees.com, which mostly I think is sells people bees, including native bees. But it did say something about heat being bad for them. If cocoons are exposed to excessive heat, harvest them 2 weeks early and place in a cool environment. They're usually harvested between in October and November, but you can't do this too early, quote unquote, because they need heat to develop into adults. So in other words, if they've gotten excessively hot during shipping, you don't really know what to do. If you make a mistake either way, it's going to be bad for the bees. So, and also the heat affects the physiology and phenology of bees in general. Physiology is obviously their bodies. Phenology is the life cycle of an animal. Like it alters the timing and how it happens. So, both of those things could be happening. It could be that the larvae got cooked, and that's why I'm not seeing them. Or it could be that they might have disappeared about the first time we mowed our lawn. So maybe, they went away because there weren't dandelions on our lawn anymore. I do not know. Possibly, I don't know. Maybe they just go dormant until fall when they hatch out again. I have no idea. So, or another thing, what I looked up was they also deal, according to Chesapeake.net, with predation by wasps. There's a specific type of wasp that lays eggs in bee nests and the larvae eat the mason bees as they develop, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like paralyze them, eat them, and wasps are hard to love. But anyway, the mason bees try to counteract this by plugging the holes with mud, apparently, which the whole thing is made out of mud. They have little like single cell apartments they make for themselves, for kind of being solitary bees. So yeah, I still don't know where my mason bees went. If anybody has ideas, let me know. I kind of suspect the heat, but it could be a number of things.
Interesting. That actually is something I noticed on the island also, is a great reduction in the number of bees. It used to be that there were all kinds of bees all over the place. This time there were almost no bees. There was one day where we went to the south part of the island, and there were some bees on the yarrow plants that were growing wild there.
Right.
There was a bumblebee. I don't know what species, but they're definitely, the bee apocalypse is happening all over the world.
Oh boy, including maybe on my porch.
Maybe on your porch.
Yeah.
The bee apocalypse has come to Rebecca's porch.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
And now we are on to ecological news. And our first story is an update on the fire situation, the wildfire situation here in North America. And we're going to start with Canada, because I believe the Canadian wildfires were creating the haze across the northern horizon that kept me from seeing stars there on Garden Island. Right now there are 752 wildfires burning. About a third of those, some degree controlled. About half, the rest are burning uncontrolled. The year to date, there have been 3,722 wildfires in Canada. Now that, according to Canadian, the official Canadian government webpage about wildfires, that matches the 10-year average of 3,700. But we have to remember that 10-year average includes last year, which had 10 times the average number of wildfires. So in other words, if you only use a 10-year average, it's going to be skewed because you've got this huge number from last year. But it is good news that there's much less wildfire this year than last. Right now, 8,800 square miles of Canada have been burned by wildfires. It's about 5.6 million acres, and there's fires right now burning in every province in Canada. So plenty of fire to make the northern horizon all hazy. And there are some predictions that this coming week, some of that Canadian wildfire smoke is going to come down into the States, the way it did last year, when I think maybe people will remember that New York City and a lot of cities around the East Coast turned that weird orange color. So, but that's an update on wildfires in Canada. Now in the U.S., we have a fair number of fires going too. We actually have the biggest fire right now, the one that is making the news, is out near Sacramento, California. It's called the Park Fire, and so far it has burned 350,000 acres, destroyed over 100 buildings. That's about 375 square miles of scorched earth. And that fire is scorching because the forest is completely tinder dry there. So it's a very heavy fire. We've reported in the past how fires can have different levels of seriousness. Like you can have a fire that just goes through and takes out the brush and the understory, the dead plants, and leaves everything pretty much intact, all the way up to, incineration, where you've got nothing but ashes left. And so the Park Fire is closer to the apocalyptic incineration than it is to the, tame little fire that just clears stuff out. It was contained to 3% of it was contained last week, and then it went down to 0% contained for 3 days. But just yesterday and today, some humid, cooler weather has moved in, and now it's up to about 10% contained. So 90% still going. And it's a notable fire because apparently allegedly it was started by a guy who set fire to a car and pushed it down into a ravine.
Oh, dude.
So it's like, this is an arson one, allegedly. That's what the authorities are saying. So, yeah, not a smart thing. I mean, maybe he was making a YouTube video or some crazy thing. Let's see.
You got to do that after it rains.
Yeah. In the U.S., so far, 22 million acres have been burned in wildfires. The worst is in California, and there are 21 fires in the U.S. so far this year have required evacuations, including the park fire. So let's hope for some rain soon. Rain has moved into Canada, so a lot of the Canadian fires are getting tamped down right now, but we paid a lot of attention to the wildfires last year, so I thought it was good to give an update this year, even though wildfires aren't in the headlines anymore. Okay, next story. CBC News, Canadian Broadcast News for July 11th, and the title is Problem at Point Lepreau Nuclear Plant Could Prolong 3-month Outage, Driving Up Costs. This is a New Brunswick nuclear power plant, and they had shut it down for a planned 100-day maintenance. But then they discovered that their main electrical generator was broken.
Oh dear.
So now they got to take the whole thing apart and try to figure out what broke and why. And so they were originally scheduled to be out for 100 days. Now they're going to be out well past September. And they may not even be functional again when winter comes, which is a problem for New Brunswick because they did get about a third of their power from this nuke plant. And so all this outage and all these repairs mean that people of New Brunswick are facing a 20% rate increase. And this is a CANDU 6 reactor. And the Canadians are all braggy about their CANDU reactor design. Though it's more dependable and it's, it's a simpler design, it's better. But it's still a nuclear reactor, and it's still costing the people of New Brunswick tons of money. And so had they taken the money that they've spent on refurbishing their broken down old plant and instead put that into wind and solar and battery storage, they would actually be much better off and probably wouldn't have to face a 20% rate increase.
But I don't know, I get the impression that the Maritimes are not the wealthiest area of Canada either.
No, it's not terribly wealthy and not terribly well populated either. So we're talking, a third of not much power.
Right.
And so they could more easily switch over. But of course, now that they're out, and like all nuclear plants, now they've got to burn coal and natural gas to make up for the power that they're not getting for their nuke plant. You can decarbonize without nukes, okay? Uruguay's done it. Kenya has also done it. They're like 98% carbon free now, and they don't have any nuclear power. But you can't decarbonize if you have nukes, because you have to have that backup power always idling, ready to go, because when a nuclear plant drops out, it scrams immediately, and within a minute you lose 1.2 gigawatts. So you have to have a fossil fuel plant running, because you can't, the nuke went down, let's start shoveling coal in there. No, it has to be, it has to be kept in what it's like an idle. So it's running, it's putting CO2 in the air. It's not going full blast because it's not needed, but then you have to be able to just throw that switch and start it going full power. And so nukes require carbon. So this idea that we're going to somehow get off of carbon with enough nuclear plants is stupid.
Yeah, okay.
To put it bluntly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our next story, which unfortunately was the Advance Act. The Advanced Act, we've reported on this before. It's basically the Nuclear Industry Wet Dream Act. Sorry to get blunt about it, but it cuts safety measures. It puts into law the elimination of safety measures over nuclear plants. And it changes the Nuclear Regulatory Commission from a regulator to a promoter. So that the job of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is no longer to protect us from meltdowns. It's now to push the nuclear industry, which is totally unnecessary because we already have a whole slew of federal agencies that are doing that. There's the Department of Energy, there's the Office of Nuclear Energy. That's their job, is to promote. The job of the NRC should be to regulate, but no longer.
It has regulate in the name.
Yeah, exactly.
They should change it if it's not going to do that anymore.
So the Advance Act also specified that microreactors now are pretty much unregulated because they're new, so you have to let them get going, and so you can't regulate them before they're built. You have to regulate them after they're built.
So just go ahead and put, hundreds of experiments all over the country.
That's the plan. Literally, that's the plan.
There's
about 100 nuclear startup companies that are starting up because of all the money that's available through the Inflation Reduction Act and the that other big bill that Biden pushed through. There's tens of billions of dollars, and they want in on that. So they're pulling out designs from the 1950s for things like molten salt reactors, and they're like, oh, we'll build these. And those were all abandoned because they were too expensive and too dangerous. But now that there's tens of billions of dollars for it, yeah, there's like 100 startups that want to just do experimental reactors all over the place. And thanks to the Advance Act, those will be pretty much unregulated.
Oh my God.
So we got to wait and see which ones melt down and which ones don't. It also got rid of, there's been a law saying that foreign companies can't own U.S. nuclear power plants because of the security.
Yeah, okay,
problems,
makes sense.
But now that's gone.
Oh, okay.
So Russia could come and build a nuke plant in your backyard and basically blackmail us because, nuke plants have a tendency, if they're not run correctly, they will melt down. But
oh boy.
Yeah.
What
So,
could
but
possibly
now,
go wrong?
yeah, now foreign countries can own U.S. nuke plants. It specifies that the NRC cannot get into regulating the mixture of these new fuel sources. Like they're talking about pellets instead of rods. They can't say what can and can't go into the pellets. And it also puts the industry insiders, the people that have a stake in running nuclear plants, puts them in control of the regulatory process.
Oh, that's great.
So in other words,
Yeah.
it's regulatory capture put into law. And it also eliminates the National Environmental Protection Act, NEPA review of nuclear plants, which historically has been a way that people, if there's a proposed nuke plant that's going to raise the temperature of your river by 15 degrees and kill all the fish, the public has in the past been able to come and testify before the regulatory agency and said, oh, this is going to raise our river temperature by 15 degrees and kill all our fish. And that could actually prevent something from being built. That should, no more. This law, the Advance Act just got rid of NEPA. And Biden signed this on July 9th. And then he dropped out of the presidential race like a couple weeks later. And I think part of it is there is still a very strong anti-nuclear core in the Democratic Party. People who grew up with things like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and Fukushima, people who understand how terrible nukes are. And Biden was just so rabidly pro-nuclear, literally the most pro-nuclear president in U.S. history. And I think that signing the Advance Act may have been one of the enthusiasm dampers that cost him the second term. So, which doesn't make me at all sad.
That he was agitated.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, and the poor debate for performance and all that stuff. So, anyway, that is that story, and we are racing along to the top of the next hour. Next story, Florida. Florida is becoming too hot to swim in.
Wow.
Yep. Too
That's
hot
a
for
whole
swimming.
ocean.
Yep. Well, it's the whole coast, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. July 9th story in USA Today, title, What Water Temp is Too Hot for Swimming? And it turns out that if the temperature gets above 90, when you try to swim in the water, your body can't get rid of the excess heat that your muscles are generating by swimming.
Right.
You can't cool down even though you're in the water, and so you basically cook. So you can't swim in water that's over 90 degrees for any length of time.
True, but like if you come back up out of the water with your upper body, then it feels cool because if the breeze is blowing on you because you're wet.
Right, but
Yeah.
but it's a losing game. Eventually, the heat keeps building up, and eventually
Right.
you will either have to get out of the water or overheat.
Yeah.
And so that's 90 degrees. Now, July 23rd of last year, off the coast of Florida, they had 101 degrees, which obviously is too hot for swimming. It turns out there's something called the National Center for Environmental Information at NOAA.
Right.
And I looked up today's temperatures. And remember, 90 is the cutoff point. It's Key West, 89.4. Vaca Key, 89.8.
Oh my.
And Virginia Key, 88.9. And yesterday, actually, Vaca Key was 91.8. So beaches in Florida are literally becoming, you can't cool down by jumping in the water. Unless,
Jeez.
I guess you could jump in and then out again and cool
Right.
and then jump in and out. But that's not fun. That's not like swimming. That's like trying to survive in a overheated world.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So
Or survival thing.
yeah. So that's interesting that Florida is becoming too hot for swimming. And sticking with ocean news, turns out that deep sea nodules, those little metal balls on the bottom of the ocean that form as metals precipitate out of the seawater, and they form very slowly. Okay,
Huh.
This is an important point. They grow 10 millimeters per million years.
So they're kind of like ocean stalagmites almost.
Right, but even slower, like
Wow.
10 millimeters
Wow.
over a million years. And they're, but there's people that want to mine them. We've already reported that Norway has approved of deep sea nodule mining off their coast, which is insane. And we've just discovered that it's even more insane than we thought, because the latest research shows, this is a research done on nodules that are 13,000 feet down, so there's no light down there at all, but they found lots of oxygen, and the oxygen is coming from these deep sea nodules.
And it's probably going up into the air eventually, right?
Eventually, but basically
What
the
the
most,
fishies need to drink.
that's
to
it.
breathe
Mostly it's being used by the organisms, the squids and the
Okay.
fish and so forth, living down there. That's how they breathe.
Right.
Not from oxygen from the atmosphere, but from oxygen from these deep sea nodules.
Holy wow.
And
that's
that
amazing.
explains something that in the 1980s, there was an attempt at nodule mining, and they went back in 2016 and they found where they had mined was absolutely dead. It was sterilized.
Uh-oh.
And what is that? That's 40 years later, there isn't even bacteria there. That's how
Holy smoke. Wow.
complete the destruction is. Maybe in 10 million years, they'll get like 10 millimeter wide nodules there.
Oh,
They'll be able
God.
to start living down there again. But it turns out that deep sea nodule mining is a recipe for complete sterilization of the seafloor. Now, these nodules, they contain things like cobalt, nickel, copper, lithium, manganese, and the way this works is apparently electric charge builds up on the outside of them, and that actually splits the seawater. Just like when you put a battery, or if you had a solar panel and you put the ends in the water, it'll disassociate the hydrogen and the oxygen, and the oxygen floats out and diffuses into the water. So it's like
Wowie.
they're like little living batteries
Oh my
on the
gosh,
bottom of the
wow.
ocean,
Didn't know.
making life in the ocean possible. And so if we mine deep sea nodules, life in the ocean will be impossible.
Because wasn't that what we were going to eat if all the pollinators died off? Stuff from the ocean?
Yeah, right.
There goes that. Oh my God.
Yes. So hopefully this will have some effect on, maybe somebody will take this up at the United Nations or one of these sea treaty organizations, because we have to stop that nodule mining. We cannot allow it to continue. It's really not worth sterilizing the ocean even to have cell phones, you know. So, okay, final story, and we're almost done, and I'm so happy to have gotten through, to have had this show with you folks. Greenpeace, July 25. Title, In the Wake of Typhoon, Capsized Oil Tanker in Manila Bay Highlights Danger of Fossil Fuels. And this is interesting because apparently there's been a super typhoon that hit the Philippines, which I've heard nothing about. Super Typhoon Karina, and it capsized this tanker, which has 1.4 million liters of oil. It's called the MT Terra Nova, and it's in the Bay of Limay, Bataan, and it's threatening, you know, they've had the typhoon which wrecked everything on land, and now this capsized tanker is threatening to dump an oil spill on top of that, which is just a reminder that the carbon industry is bad on so many levels.
Yeah.
And if we get rid of it, the carbon industry uses 40% of its energy just to maintain itself. So we don't have to replace it with 100% renewables. We only need to replace it with 60% renewables. So it's very doable. It's being done all over the world, and we need to get off our buttons and stop playing with nuclear power and get it done here in the US. I hear the music.
Yes.
That's it. We've made it through another show. Thank you so much for listening. As I've been saying, super grateful for all my listeners. This is Joe DeMar.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time